Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to First Cut. This is my dense spoiler review of Attack on Titan. I'm here with a very special guest. We have Rafael in the house making another comeback to talk about Attack on Titan as a whole. You've seen him all over the internet when it comes to Attack on Titan perspective and thoughts, whether it's IndieWire, the New York Times, everywhere. This guy's doing it. IGN, I know you just did a review for that as well. Rafael, how are you feeling right now?
I am feeling good, relieved that it's over and that it didn't mess anything up. I am very sad that it's over, but I am getting very happy that we got to experience this as fans for like the past 10 years.
Yeah, it's insane the journey that a lot of us have taken when it comes to Attack on Titan, because I know a lot of the fan base, no shade to you guys, have just joined in maybe season 4, season 3. But as a day one, as someone who started from the beginning, this is just overwhelming. I think that's what I told you when you messaged me. It's just that a lot to take in when it comes to the finale, the entire series as a whole, the meaning behind the series. I've been trying to digest it for the past 4 days since the finale has come out. And I'm just like trying to lift the weight of this entire series on my back, trying to figure out where my head is, how I'm feeling, the characters that stayed with me the most. It's just so much to take in, man, but I'm definitely glad to have you on the show. The very first thing I want to jump into, Rafael, before we get into anything else, is your thoughts on the finale. I know there's a little bit of a split perspective as far as people who liked it, some people who loved it. I want to hear your thoughts on the finale.
So my perspective is a little bit different in that I read the manga. And I didn't hate it, and I didn't like warn people about it, but I did feel a little bit like I loved the ending up until the epilogue, and then the epilogue kind of I was kind of like, okay, it's fine. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't like amazing in any way. Then I watched the anime, and after I've had by this point like 2 years to sort of sit down with that anime and know like the meaning behind it, what's gonna happen. So I had a little bit more time to process. But watching the anime version, I was just blown away. For like the action, the emotion, the acting, just the reviews. I think it was as good an ending as Attack on Titan could have had.
Yeah, I feel like there's something about anime, and I know I've read manga as well, and I read it, by the way. I told you, I think last time, that I have it right behind me, and as soon as I finished it, guess what I did? I read it. And there's something about the filmmaking, man. I'm just telling you, it's music, acting. I know that people love manga and people love reading this stuff, and it's great. But I still like, I say the same thing with Jujutsu Kaisen. There's something about the filmmaking of it all, the shot selection, the camera work, the acting, the music, all those stuff put together to make something a little bit more substantial than I think what you can get from pages, even though pages can be really good as well.
I think especially something like Attack on Titan, where the author has said in the past that he considers the anime to be like the final version, to be like the proper telling of the story. That I just say like it takes everything good about the manga and just makes it better, I think.
Speaking of the author, I know you had the chance to speak with the author who just like comes out of his cave every 2,000 years. Basically, it's kind of crazy you got the chance to speak to Iyasama, but I want to get just the whole background on that. How did that come about, and how was that?
So about a year ago, I just started thinking like, well, when the anime ends, it's going to be a pretty significant event, and I want to try and get as big a byline as I can because I know the show deserves it. The fans deserve like the exposure, and if I can take that opportunity to just get that byline, I will do it. And through a friend, I got a contact at the New York Times, and I'm like, this is perfect. And I reached out, and they seemed open to it, but it was just a matter of, is the anime actually going to end? Because last year it was like the final season part 2, and we had no idea if it was going to be a movie. I think we talked about if it was going to be like a theatrical movie, if it was going to be just an extra set of episodes or what. So once they announced, okay, there's going to be a third part in 2023, we're going to put it on hold. I started like trying to reach out to see who I could talk to. And then when we finally got the date for the final episode, I reached out again, and they gave me the go ahead to just see who I could talk to. And then it was through shout out to Tyler over at Crunchyroll, who set everything out. He's an angel. I would not have done this without him. I tried to get some people over at MAPPA to talk about the actual anime adaptation, but they were pretty adamant about talking before the finale aired. So I couldn't get that perspective. But once Isayama said yes, I'm like, okay, at least I can talk about his making of the manga, because he wouldn't talk about the anime because it hadn't aired by the time I did the interview. So there was nothing off limits. But the moment I tried asking about the anime, he sort of stepped back and evaded the question. But other than that, I just took the chance to just ask basically everything that fans have been debating for the past 2 years since the manga ended, just clarifying some things that he has sort of touched on in the past. So I knew he wasn't completely shut out to talk about his intentions or anything. Just like, can you clarify this a bit more and sort of answer those questions fans had that maybe they didn't get from the pages?
Yeah, I feel like that's a big thing. Was that was via Zoom, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you came to clarification, what was the big clarifications that you wanted to kind of get off your chest that you feel like fans wanted to know?
So my editors wanted me to focus on the ending. So I thought, okay, the big thing, because I know he did some interviews last year when he had like a panel at
That's
Anime
right.
NYC.
Yeah.
But most of the interviews I saw were from people who had either not read the manga or trying to avoid spoilers. So there were general questions, but at the panel, the sort of vibe from the interviews was that he had some regrets about how his intentions came across, that he maybe wasn't as clear as he thought he could be. So particularly, I wanted to ask about the now kind of infamous line, for no reason, from the manga where Armin talks to Eren at the very end and sort of thanks him for what he's done before saying, well, but we're still gonna kill you because what you're doing is wrong. And it is still clear that he wasn't really like agreeing with Eren, but it was still like a bit of a clunky line that had a lot of people talking. So I'm like, well, can you? And I know he said that he's after he's sort of gone back on it a little bit. So I wanted to get a bit more clarification on what exactly he meant with that scene. And it's basically what we saw in the anime, which changed the whole scene quite a bit to to make it as clear as possible what the intention was. I think the anime did a really good job of just taking the meaning and remove any subtlety. And just say that, well, he wasn't really agreeing to him. He was he's still grateful that in Eren's mind, he thought he was doing it for a good thing, and Armin is grateful for that. But he's in no way, shape, or form thanking him for being a genocidal maniac. He's just trying to, as Isayama told me, he's trying to sort of take the blame because he feels responsible for leading Eren on in that direction, and also for him also becoming a killer throughout the final season. So that was my big thing. And then because I think we talked for the last special, the previous episode, that I love the line where Eren says that he just was so disappointed with the outside world the moment he realized that there were people in it. So I wanted to ask him about that too, and whether he saw that Eren actually had agency, or whether he was actually just like being led on by the powers. And he had a really interesting answer that has been popping up all over the internet now, where he compares his own journey as an author with that of Eren, in that he came up with the ending, like the general idea of Eren becoming the villain from the very beginning. But it wasn't until the manga became a success that he realized that he was stuck with that and he couldn't change it. And he feels no regret, but he came across as feeling like the art form, the manga art form became as restrictive to him as Eren's powers became for Eren, in that he could have said no, he could have changed the ending, but he felt like he had to follow through on what he came up with when he was young. And to be fair, he started writing when he was like 22, 23, and he's almost 40. Like, I will assume that his viewpoints have changed at least a little bit
Yeah.
in the past 13 years or so. So I sympathize with that idea of like, well, even if you are not as pessimistic as you were back then, you still have to follow through on the ending that you planned out so meticulously over the years.
Yeah. How do you feel what he would have changed? If you can kind of infer on that.
So I read there were some interviews a couple of years ago where he spoke about changing the tone, and I think that's what he might have changed. And I think he supposedly he already changed it from like the very first idea that he had. Like initially, he said something about wanting to emulate or like pay homage to The Mist, the movie based on Stephen King's book, which based on that ending just mean like he was gonna do the bleakest possible thing. But then he sort of went back on that and decided to do something slightly more fun and adventurous, and he compared it to like Guardians of the Galaxy, which I don't see the comparison. This is definitely not a Guardians of the Galaxy ending, but I feel like had he been completely free to change the ending, I don't know, he might have either gone even harder on the destruction or pulled back a little bit, and maybe not made Eren want to destroy all of humanity, but like a little bit like scale it down. I'm not sure, but like based on what he's talked, I think like the tone of it was what he struggled with a lot over the years.
You by tone, do you mean like the nihilistic kind of like
Yeah,
doom
yeah.
kind of tone? Okay.
Yeah, the fact that like he also in the interview I asked about like the final shock with like Paradise being destroyed and everything, and he said like, well, yeah, like that, like he had a very sort of nihilistic point of view in that he could not conceive of a way to make his world be free of war because that's not the world we live in. So I feel like that sort of nihilism, like eh, everything is messed up regardless of what we do. He might have wanted to change, but that at the same time, that's not the story he started telling.
Yeah. I feel like there's so much there, because I was just telling you before we went on camera that I've been avoiding a lot of the Attack on Titan controversy for years, since the manga started to get into season 4, when a couple of my friends were kind of in my ear telling me like, hey, look out for Attack on Titan. I know you're a fan, but I heard that such and such, such and such. And I always kind of shut them down because I didn't want to get spoiled because I was an anime only. So for years, I've been avoiding videos on my feed. I've been avoiding comments on Twitter that have talked about this kind of controversial take on Attack on Titan, because every time they would get into it, they would get into the finale and they would get into spoilers. And I would always say, hey, let me watch it for myself. Let me finish it before I engage with it. And now I've spent 5 days engaging with it, and it's absolutely insane. So I feel a little bit overwhelmed watching a lot of the past videos that I've had on, bookmarks or on save videos, just to make sure and watch it after I finish the show, now that I can get into spoilers and now that I see what a lot of people were talking about. And now I'm inundated from a lot of people who I think are coming from a really good perspective or a good place, that want to try and criticize a piece of media that they feel can be dangerous in some aspects. How do you feel about just the cloud of controversy that is just making a comeback now that anime viewers, which is a bigger portion, are catching up to it?
So I think that there's two things. I think the two biggest sort of controversies that I followed over the years was first the first time we learned about Marley and sort of the armbands and the use of real world imagery and World War
Yes.
II imagery, and how a lot of people took that as being a one-to-one parallel, which, yes, if you try to make a one-on-one analogy, no matter what race, what people, what country you use, it's gonna look bad. It doesn't matter whether you consider aliens to be like Japan, to be the US, to be Jewish people, it doesn't matter, it's gonna look bad. And I think that as the show went on, it became clear that it was not done in bad faith, first of all, and also it was mostly a shortcut for Isayama to not have to explain, like, these are people who are being oppressed. Like, you just see the arms and you make the connection yourself, without really saying anything about it. He was just using the imagery, which, to be fair, he did it in a way that was slightly lazy because of that, because he seemingly didn't realize that people could take it the wrong way, which is totally fair, because again, he doesn't explain his motivation really, and the text doesn't really. He uses it deliberately at the beginning, at least. So when those first chapters started coming out, people were like, "Well, we have nothing else to base this on except for what we're seeing." So of course, they started making those connections. So I think that was a criticism that was valid to a degree, but also the text told you what was going on.
Yeah.
And the text sort of showed you that that was not really part of what he was trying to say at all. And then the second sort of controversy was towards the very end, like the final chapter, and people who thought he was sort of validating Eren, because again, the whole like Armin sort of thanking him. We see they thought that Eren was redeemed at the end. Like we see Elia with like a bunch of like becoming a military state and all of that. And I think again, a lot of that is people who wanted to jump to conclusions, people who maybe didn't watch the show, read the manga, but just went straight to the finale, or who didn't engage with the story enough to really read the message that were like, no, they are very, very clearly against everything Eren is doing. Like, if you want to come out and watch the finale and think like he was justified, I feel like you just want that to be your conclusion. You're not listening to what the show is telling you. Like, it could not be clearer. Like, Eren himself says he's an idiot and what he did failed. Like, there was no point to it. He thought he had a justification, and like, sure, I totally understandable. But what he did was wrong, and there's no other way to see that. And Elia ending with like the Jaeger is in charge is not a good thing. It's not validation. It's just a huge mistake that he was just an idiot who didn't think that through.
Yeah, I feel like there's just a lot there, because I do feel like a lot of the people come from, I've watched the anime and I'm afraid, right? Where the problem with Attack on Titan that I've seen already in the past couple of years, regardless of these perspectives that I haven't seen, is that there is a lot of the fan base that come from, I've told you before, a really bad place, a really bad faith, bad place, whatever you want to say, who I personally think openly and aggressively misread what's on the text, not just on an Eren scale, but just on an everything scale, where I've heard, and I've said this on Twitter, I've heard the worst, and I mean the absolute worst takes of Attack on Titan, just probably more than any other show. And that's saying a lot. So I feel like when people see that fan base and that growing fan base, where a lot of these people are coming from a bad place, and they say to themselves, oh my God, then it must be the author, it must be the text, it must be the show, it must be this art form that is turning these kids or these people into monsters, which I don't feel like that's necessarily the case. Maybe that's just me, and maybe I am coming from because it's hard. It's very complex. I am coming from a place of like good faith and engaging with the story and feeling like the Jaegerists are very clearly bad. Marley's fascist dictator is very bad. Like there's not, I don't see any kind of like, well, Marley's fascist and they're the good. I'm like, there's not a single good Marley person. Like maybe McGath, and even he gets killed off, and even he does
He
like
learns. He wasn't a good person. He
yeah.
just learns to be less bad. Yeah.
So I just feel like I saw someone say like, well, the Marleys turned out to be, some of them are good, and I'm like, there's not, like Reiner and Peak are clearly shown to be brainwashed Eldians, not Marleyans at all. Like it's very clear that this dictatorship on the other side of the sea that is obsessed with the very first shot we see in season 4 is a war against the Mid-East forces, which again is to show their colonial, imperialistic, dictator, fascist ideology is bad. Like I don't see how they show that in a positive light or in a like, yeah, look how cool this is. Like I don't get that. And I understand that people who are critiquing that are not saying it because necessarily the show is saying it, but I feel like they're saying it maybe because a lot of the fans are saying it. A lot of the bad faith fans are like, yeah, that's cool. Eldia all the way, Jaeger is till I die. And I'm just like, that's not what the show is saying. I feel like that's probably why a lot of people have made these video essays that I've watched over the past 5 days talking about the issues of Attack on Titan. And also the Japanese-ness of it all, where there is a big connection to Japanese fascism, Japanese imperialism, Japanese restorationists, where there is a political divide currently within Japan that has had this kind of extreme right-wing ideology that has kind of invaded other forms of media. So they fear that Attack on Titan is probably the biggest one of them all. And yet I've watched the entire show and I still don't feel that way. And I've watched all these videos and I still don't feel that way. Am I wrong? I don't know.
No, I think you hit a good point in that some people, some creators, some critics want to protect certain parts of the audience from the bad parts of the audience.
Yes.
But they end up just blaming the text for people's own interpretations.
Yeah.
Like, yes, a lot of people just took the worst possible lessons from the show and they completely miss out the point and they defend the worst people to the very end. But that's on them. That's not on the text. That's not on the show. That's not on the author. But because the story, I think like the thing about Attack on Titans, I think it is very good at just presenting all of these things and ideas without, in a very human way, where you understand everyone's perspective, even if they're completely wrong and should not be rooted for. You still like you understand. It's the reason why a lot of people, myself included, didn't want to even think that Eren was a bad guy until like there was no other choice.
Yeah.
Until the very end, you're like, well, but like maybe he has a reason. Maybe there's something else here. But that's not on the text.
Mm.
That is on people's interpretation, especially when, again, the finale makes it very clear what its stance is. It makes it very clear that Eren Yeager was wrong, that the Jaegerists were the worst people. It makes it clear that everyone was bad except for like the core group, if that, who like they themselves admit like, yeah, no, they're not good people. They're also killing a bunch of people too. So I think like a lot of the controversy was just everyone jumping to conclusions by preemptively apologizing in case their take was considered wrong.
Yeah.
In spite of the text sort of supporting some views.
And I feel like if I could kind of counter you a little bit, I feel like part of that is on the audience and on the author. I feel like part of that is, like you said, maybe a little bit of laziness, maybe a little bit of not directness, a little bit more of directness, where a lot of other anime and a lot of other forms of media, whether it comes to movies or TV shows, are a little bit more direct with what is and what isn't there. And Attack on Titan shows a lot of complexity. It shows a lot of, like you said, humanity, which humanity is a lot of gray. And I feel like it works with Attack on Titan, but at the same time, there should be a little bit more of an effort there from the author to push against that, if I'm being completely honest. And I feel like this is 2023 as well, where there's no way to escape the art from the artist. There's just absolutely no way to escape it. There's a clarity between George R.R. Martin, J.K. Rowling, whoever it is who's writing the text, to explain exactly what they're trying to say, and then to condemn anything that's against that. Where even movies, right? Where if people try to misread a movie, there's the director to try and correct that. Where I've seen, if there's some sort of weird ass right-wing view of Star Wars, George Lucas will shoot that down. He shot that down many times. Or James Cameron with Avatar, or any other movie that tries to present these heavy themes of colonialism, imperialism, of fascism, whatever you want to say. There's clearly an author there to just start shooting down bad thoughts, bad theories, whereas Iyasama has kind of stood back. And I feel like that's a very Japanese thing to do, right? Obviously, that's different from his perspective versus the American perspective. But at the same time, I've been openly critical, Rafael, of American pieces of media that have been inviting sort of bad thoughts because they don't engage with it in a positive way. This is me just like pushing, right? Where I've said in the past that I feel like a lot of people kind of cater towards certain pieces of work and pieces of media because of the edgelordy kind of like crazy, ideology of it, when in reality, that's not what the work is saying. There's been a lot in the past, right? I mean, Joker is one. I've seen a lot of awful takes from The Boys, where people just absolutely watch The Boys and are like, yo, this is just like right-wing heaven. This is like extreme awesomeness, where Homelander is king. He should be worshipped. We should bow at his feet. And I'm just like, what is happening? and there is just no disconnect. Or same with the recent Amazon show, Invincible. People are just like, Viltrumites all the way till I die. And I'm just like, Viltrumites look evil. What are you talking about? But there are people who really actively like that stuff. And I do feel like part of it is there should be a little bit more clarity from the author. I've asked for that from American media. And yet when it comes to this one, if I could explain what I feel, I do feel like there is some bad tropes in the show. And there is some very clear fascist visualization, kind of imagery that is shown in the show, but I never see it as a positive thing. If you think about where we were in season 4, Rafael, with the Jaegerists coming up, right? It's so interesting how they did it. The way Iyasama chose to do that is that the Survey Corps was the harboring ground for the Jaegerists. It was the Survey Corps that harbored them and that really gave them life and gave them wings to fly, right? The wings of freedom, where they were able to sprout out of that area. And there's a very, very clear scene that I think kind of spells it out. I forget what episode it is, but it's the episode where they kill Zachary, where you hear the line that we've been saying for years, Shinzo Sasageo, be used in a very dark, eerie, creepy, kind of evil, kind of bad way, where we suddenly start to realize maybe this kind of militaristic kind of ideology has harbored and has kind of creating the watering ground for the worst kind of military perspective, which is the Jaegerists that kind of rise up from it. So when you see all the people screaming that out and you hear the music in the background going kind of in and out and the violins going creepy, that's me being like, I'm pretty sure they're trying to tell you this is bad. So I don't know.
No, you're right. I want, because you bring a bunch of really interesting things. I think first of all, you mentioned the whether or not there's a responsibility to, if not to outright explain an author's point of view, at least shut down very, very, very extreme misinterpretations of it. And there's, I seen like recently, just for example, like David Fincher talking about Fight Club and how that's taken a completely different legacy than what he intended, and Alan Moore outright disowning all of his superhero work because of how much people twisted his words. And I think that something like that, especially like today's, that's something where like Isayama being from Japan is maybe at least understandable that he has a different perspective. Like this may not apply as much over there, maybe. But I think like where with how often that happens today, where like people so very like a section of fandom very clearly looks to misinterpret things, to push their own ideology and their own messed up ideas. There is somewhat of a responsibility to, if not explain what the text means, at least, as you're saying, we like start with like come out and say like, yeah, I'm not gonna tell you what to think, but at least telling you like that's not what I wanted, that's not what I meant. This show can be many things, but it's not a fascist fantasy. It's not a right wing like wish fulfillment thing. So I do think that at least that part there might have maybe there should have been a little bit more effort to counter those ideas when they started popping up a lot towards like the second half of the manga and the anime. But at the same time, I'm saying with like I just saying with the Jaguars and like the very text, I think that that's why I love the anime adaptation of the finale so much, because it makes all of the subtext text. It makes it very clear that in case you hadn't realized until now, it is telling you, no, Eren is not someone you should idolize. He's not somebody to worship. He was wrong. Everything he did was wrong. Everything he did was stupid and pointless too. Because even if you want to say, well, he might be wrong, but he had like a reason, or maybe, or you want to say like his plan worked, it didn't. The show made it very clear that it didn't. There might have been no other, like, the alternatives weren't necessarily good, but this was the worst case scenario for everyone involved. Like it's very clear about that, and it is very clear that the Jaguars were never something good or something to root for. So I do think like at the very least, the anime version is clear in its intent, and it is shutting down everyone. Now, should it have done something earlier? Probably yes. Should it have like at least, I don't know, whether like in interviews or the actual show, like address these concerns or these ideas when they started happening, rather than let it fester for so many years and let people grow into these Eren worshippers for the past, like the final season has been happening for like 3 years. That was enough time to shut it down before it became big, and they didn't. So that part I totally agree with, that there may have been something, there should have been something more to it. And then I also wanted to point out, you mentioned like the Jaegers and the connection with like the scouts, and that's something I really liked about the finale, and rewatching the previous episode, the previous special, where they make a lot of effort to remind you that the scouts were never about killing titans. They were specifically about, and not, they weren't about killing anyone. They weren't about like conquering the outside world. They were specifically about seeking knowledge and the betterment of all of humanity, which at that point they thought were just people in the walls. So when we see something like I just said, like the moment where the Jaegers take over and they start appropriating the slogan and the logo and everything, it is very clear that they're not scouts. That it may have come from the scouts cadets, because everyone, like there's no point to having a military police when you know there's a whole army out there, a whole world wanting to kill you. Like it makes sense that everyone will turn into scouts, but the show makes it clear that the ideals of what the scouts meant is not what the Jaegers became. They were never an army. They were never uh, the police, they were never meant to be an offense. They were always just the wings of freedom. They wanted to be like they just wanted to go out and explore. They didn't want to kill things. They just had to because they were tight.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot there, and it's a very interesting perspective once you look back at it all, because you start from a season one and you see where we're going and what's been happening this whole time, and you go past season three. It's kind of funny because you kind of brush past season three. A lot happened in season three, but I do feel like a lot of the negativity and the negative perspective usually comes from a character that's not coming from a good place, where their perspective is very clearly shown to be from a bad place. But I want to get to some of the stuff that is supposed to be remembered through it all, Rafael, which is the show as a whole. When you think of Attack on Titan, I did a little short video about it, but what do you think is the biggest theme of the show?
So James Beckett from Anime News Network did an excellent review of this, where of the final episode, where he basically said that, and I think that applies to the whole show really. The main takeaway from Attack on Titan, I think, is just the way we as humans become extremely messed up when we live in fear, fear of other, fear of ourselves, fear of something big, and how that forces or like that leads us to turn everything that's good about ourselves into something ugly and violent. And you think of like season one Eren and his fear of Titans. Like I mean, I don't want to make everything about Star Wars, but like Yoda said it best. Like fear turns into hate, like the hate leads to suffering. It is true. We see it here. Like Eren's fear of Titans turns into hatred for Titans, which turns into I want to kill everyone. It doesn't matter. I'm not even thinking straight anymore. We see that with like Marley and the rest of the world, like their fear of Titans and what like aliens 2,000 years ago did to them, turn into we're gonna subjugate these people for no reason, into we're gonna force this random kid to want to kill everyone because we couldn't even imagine that we should maybe just talk to them first. So I think that the biggest theme of the show and the reason why it may seem so nihilistic is because we cannot, and Isayama seems to not find a way to imagine us moving past that,
Yeah.
of us living completely without fear. But I think the other big takeaway is that like violence is never justified. Like the show makes it very clear, like violence, especially war and genocide, is never justified. But it is worth it to fight to protect especially kids from living in a world of fear. That the thing that is most worth it is to make sure that people live like that's why like I think Gabi and Falco became such important characters because of that final scene where they're just like finally being kids and like planting trees or whatever, where they are free from being soldiers, they're free from war. And I think the show makes that a very big thing, but also just that even when things are so bleak, even in a world as nihilistic as Attack on Titan, you can find moments to smile, to like. It's kind of like it boils down to very basic things, but it's still, I think the show portrays it in a very nuanced way. Just like there are moments when it's worth it to just smile, even when everything sucks. The way like Mikasa sort of gives like a very faint smile when she kills Eren, which is like the worst possible thing that could happen to her. But she finds a way to see it as not killing him, but freeing him. The way that Ymir, after 2,000 years of just suffering through this hell, her final moment, I don't know how you want to interpret it, whether she's like actually dead now, or if she just disappears because she wants to, but her final image is just her with her daughters rather than her as a Titan or her in her suffering, just take one good thing that happened to her. So I think that Attack on Titan was always a very bleak and nihilistic show, but it was also a show that recognize that even within that bleakness, we have reason, and we should find reasons to live, to find some version of happiness, to find some version of peace within that darkness, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and I had to sit with it for a while in order to reach my conclusion. Obviously, there's so much about war and violence and fear, like you said, and I feel like a lot of that is like overcoming fear. That line that Armin says to Zeke, I really feel like is one of the biggest things, where he says, "My friends are fighting fear right now by doing what they're doing," and I feel like that's kind of the point as well, where it comes to sacrifice for the good of the many, where you have to realize that regardless of what the intentions are, you have to do the right thing, like no matter what, even if the right thing means you'll probably die. I feel like that's the point, right? That's the whole point of doing morality has never been about a reward. It's never been about, same thing with virtue. It's never been about like, if I do this, then I'll get this. It's always been about, if I'll do this, it's because it's the right thing to do.
I mean, that's the scouts. That's what they do, right?
Yeah,
they know they will most likely die, but they just keep going out there for the sake of
exactly.
everyone else.
And I feel like a part of that too is like, there's this sense of like, where is this going if we do lose our morality, and if we do lose our way of humanity, where I feel like there's going to be so many think pieces, and I already see it. And before I saw it, I was like, I'm already coming up with like my thoughts on it, where the whole thing is like, what if Eren just flattened everything outside paradise? Flock is made king, put a crown on his head, and everything is all about paradise, paradise, paradise. And I kept thinking about it, and I said to myself, like, I keep going back, obviously, to the speech Hanji gave, which is the most blatantly obvious speech ever, but it's very clear is what she says, as far as like, you can't just justify this evil if we're okay, that it's still evil, it's still wrong, and it's still immoral. And then I go back to Flock's speech to Zumabito, where Zumabito says, you're still going to kill each other. There's still going to be awful, horrific things on this island, even if there's no one left in the planet. And Flock basically is like, yeah, but I'll be in charge, or I'll be on top. I'll decide the killing. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. Like, that's what would have happened. I kept thinking, like, there's going to be think pieces of like, what's going to happen, what would have happened if Eren just did the whole thing and Flock is made king or whatever. And I kept thinking, like, I don't think paradise would have lasted that long, if I'm being honest. I mean it. I really do feel like they would have killed each other out, and there'd be no planet.
I mean, we already saw that when as soon as they took over, they just started killing everyone who disagreed with Flock.
Exactly. He just kept killing people who said, he's like, submit to me or die, and he has a gun to your head. And I'm like, this is supposed to be bad, guys. People who are watching this, very clearly it shows that even if Eren did flatten the rest of the world, paradise would have fallen into a, dog eat dog world, where Flock is made king, kills everyone he wants to. Some sort of uprising would have happened. The anti-Flock guy, revolutionary figure, fight each other, wiped out. Either way, if anything, this would have been quicker. I think paradise would have lasted less if there was no people left on the planet, because just the way he was headed was just like, there is no one else to fight but yourselves. And if there's no one left to fight but yourselves, you're just going to kill each other. When you don't have morality, when you already sailed that ship and you already said you're cool with what Eren is doing, morality's out the window. Are you even human anymore? Do you even value life anymore if you're willing to sacrifice billions? Probably not. And then what's a few hundred? What's a few thousand? What's a few million? If you already let Eren, or if you already like that Eren killed billions. I don't know. That to me is very clearly spelled out, where there is a direction that they were headed that wasn't the right thing to do no matter what. And the right thing, even if it bought them a few hundred years, which it looks like it did, is good enough, because that's success in a way that they probably wouldn't have experienced. I want to get to the bombing of paradise, Rafael. How did you, I know a lot of people are going to talk about that too. How did you view that scene? Because I know a lot of people are angry about it, happy about it.
I love that whole thing.
Okay.
I wish there wasn't just a tiny little square on the screen. I wish like we like I don't know why they didn't make the images
Oh,
bigger.
okay. Yeah.
Because I just marvel just like the design of like futuristic paradise with the buildings. It looks so cool. Um, but no, again, I just love the fact that it does two things. It just in case there was any sliver of doubt, it finished like proving Eren wrong, that it didn't matter. It didn't matter what he did. It didn't matter that, as he says, he put everyone on equal grounds in terms of like technology and population. It didn't matter. Everyone just killed each other at the end. The power of the Titans. We knew this from like season 4. Eventually, mankind would find a bigger, better weapon, and there you go. They had nukes eventually. Um, and he again showed like Isayama's ultimate sort of nihilistic point of view of the cycle just never ends because that's just human nature. And yet, the important thing is not paradise being nuked, but what comes after. In the planet heals, there's like greenery everywhere, and we see that the boy and the dog, which now I kind of want. I don't want him to continue, but I do want. I would be okay with like a special one-off thing, like a post-apocalyptic Attack on Titan. Uh, I thought that was very cool. Now the question is, do you think that meant because the tree very much grows into resembling the tree from Emir's time? Does that mean there's Titans again, or is it just the visual look cool and it kind of resembles the other thing?
I took it as a latter. I feel like I know a lot of people have been saying like, here they come again, the Titans are, and I'm just like, that's not how I took it at all. I didn't take that worm thing as coming back. I don't think that's where the worm thing went. I just keep calling it the worm thing, but I don't know what else to call it. But I don't think that was ever implied that the worm was in that tree. I know Eren was in there, but they clearly showed that Eren is a separate entity to that worm that creates Titans.
Well, then you get into like if there's any sort of residue from his spinal fluid in that tomb.
Yeah,
he like
I get that. Yeah, I
did,
feel
did
like
he did the tree grow from his head and became like a new worm? I don't know. I doubt. I'm with you. I don't think it means anything, but it does. It is a cool visual.
yeah, I felt like it was more like this kid lives on, life lives on, the tree lived on, memories lived on through it all. It wasn't necessarily like here come the Titans again. That's just how I took it. I feel like the Titan era has passed. If anything, it was more like the kid's gonna find memories and history and more like that than necessarily another Titan. But that's just my perspective on it.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
But that being said, the idea of a post-apocalyptic Titan, like how does a Titan look after everything's gone? It does feel like at least I don't know. It looks cool. The idea looks cool.
Yeah.
I don't want to see it, but it
Yeah.
sounds cool.
Yeah. It took me a minute to swallow that scene in. I can't lie. But then again, you know what really sealed the deal for me, man? And I keep going back to it. And I know if anyone's watching, I'm sure they're tired of hearing it. But to me, what sealed the deal was as soon as we went back to Paradise, in the whole, after the battle scene, where I think it's Historia narrating, and she says, Jaegerists have taken over. I was like, all right, I'm out. Like, to me, as soon as you said Jaegerists took over, I'm like, yeah, there's no way they're not going to get.
Yeah, you're lost. Yeah.
You're going to get bombed out regardless, because there's no way there's going to be peace talks with Jaegerists in charge, or like significant peace talks. I'm sure there were some sort of peace talks, but I just feel like that's kind of the point of them being bombed out, is to show that this is what happens regardless of all your military might, all your military power. It's still going to be bombed out because you're just putting absolutely no effort into establishing actual peace relations. When you have the opportunity, all you're doing is putting all your effort into making more military technology. And regardless of how much technology they made, they still ended up dying. And I feel like that's kind of the point of what Iyasama is saying. He's saying this obsession with militaristicness and all this stuff that I've been talking about for years has never been this kind of pro, let's go get powerful and bigger and stronger. It's always been about like, what is it that you're actually investing in? And that's why when I made my video, I've made another one as well, where I say that investing in young people and investing in the next generation and investing in what planet you're creating is actually more powerful, because that's actually what lives on, and not this kind of military technology and militaristic point of view. So I felt like that bombing was to signify that this is what, you know, this obsession with war will get you. Like that saying that they had, I was like, yeah, you keep fighting, but you know, you're still gonna lose. It's like, oh, we fight, we win, we lose, we die. I'm like, yeah, but that's not gonna get you anywhere. And I feel like that was the point. The point was like, it didn't get them anywhere. So
Yeah, especially the fact that they when they're like marching, the speech they're using repeating what Eren said, just if you fight, you win. If you don't fight, you lose. But they lost because they fought.
yeah,
I'm just saying. And also like the fact that going again to like it leaves no room for interpretation regarding Eren being wrong. The fact that you could interpret the ending as like even before Elia gets bombed out, which is like who knows, centuries, millennia in the future, they get only 3 years of actual peace that we know of. But Armin and the others just think they're gonna get bombed out on the boat before they get to shore.
yeah,
Like as far as we know, they could have just sunk and died there because of the people that Eren left, like associated himself with.
yeah,
So like all of that to save his friend, just to have them die by flux followers,
yeah.
that's like a pretty dark, and also like a pretty bad plan from Eren's side for me. Now I don't know if they actually bombed the place. I think like some people were saying that you can kind of see Armin visiting Mikasa and Eren's grave at the tree during the montage. But still, the fact that they are thinking about it, that they think and they seriously consider the fact that they may get killed as soon as they touch Paradise, that's enough of a hint that, yeah, no, this whole thing was wrong.
Yeah, that's how I took it as well. Last question I kind of want to get to you, Rafael, is what's the character that's going to stay with you the most after the finale? Because I feel like, you know, there's still past characters, there's still Hanji and stuff like that, but I feel like now with these kind of core characters, what's the one person that you're just like, damn, that one is like cutting deep?
So I think like I think the finale was all about Armin, and it's pretty hard not to get out, like not to end the show without him being like even a better character than he was before. But anytime I rewatch the show, I keep liking Reiner more and more. And I'm just so very happy that he ended up, like I wrote in my review that on one of the pieces I wrote, that his final purpose, and I'm very happy about that, his final purpose was not killing Eren. It wasn't to kill anyone, but it was to defend the others while they finish the job. Like if you think about the Armored Titan, it is a shield. It is not meant to be an attack Titan. That's what the others are for. And yet he was always forced into this role of the one that breaks the wall, the one that attacks and kidnaps Eren, the one that does all the fighting. When that's not Reiner, that's the role he was forced into taking. So the fact that the finale has him just being the last stand, the last line of defense for all of humanity, the one that just there stopping the worm and just holding out while Armin beats up Eren and Mikasa kills him. And he's just the one that like, okay, I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to sacrifice myself. If I die, I'm doing it for you. And then seeing his reunion with his mom and her saying, I'm sorry, and that it's okay that you're not a Titan. It's okay that you are just you. That just solidified him for me as, if not the best character, at least the one with the biggest sort of arc. And at least the one with the most satisfying arc, at least to me, throughout the show. Because Eren has like a pretty big arc, but like that's not a good place where he ends up.
You said everything I wanted to say. The one that just hit me the hardest, that I kept going back to, that I was just like, damn, like the finale really did something to me. I've always liked Reiner, and I've always kind of like gone on this roller coaster with him, where a lot of people started to hate him, obviously, for what he did. And with reason, obviously, because, you know, it was horrific and all that. But the way they just went back, explained it, his history, his background, his death wish, he kept wanting to die so bad, but he just won't die. It's just incredible the way he's able to come back from. He's just like a comeback guy, like the way from just despair and hopelessness and hatred and violence and no father and the hatred of your father and mother who you're not sure about, but you still love, and people you're defending. And to me, he's more a hero than any other character in the show for some reason. Like, I'm not even tripping when I say that. I'm like, I think hero in the show. John as well. To me, I would put John up there, and maybe Hanji as well. But like, besides, if it's like a Titan, I would say, or a Titan shifter, I would say Reiner is the biggest hero in the show. He's the one who stood his ground, who fought back, who, even though he wanted to die, stuck around to the end. And even when literally he was like pulled into the depths of hell in that scene, where I felt it when he said, this is another torment, when he's being pulled apart by all the Titans that he loves, or the people that he loves turned into Titans trying to stop him, even his own mother. I was like, damn, this is like, Reiner has just seen the worst, bro. He's been to hell and back to hell.
And he's the first one to recognize that, yes, he's done horrible things,
no.
and he's not asking to be forgiven, but yet he's still gonna do the right thing because he has to. Like, he's the one where, like, the last two times that he fought Eren, he's not like, I'm gonna take the founder back to Marley or anything. He's just like, I just know that this is painful to you. I know I'm sparing you from that burden, and also I know that you're gonna do bad things, so you need to be stopped.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what, I'm just here to stop you. And like, yeah, because after that, like, everyone else, like John, Connie, they recognize, like, yeah, we done bad things. We're like you, Reiner. But Reiner was the first one to recognize that he was a bad guy, but yet he's gonna work to do what's right regardless. Now, I really want to ask you, because I think, like, something that's very interesting about the finale being so long, and compared to like the manga where you had way more time to digest everything, just the fight on top of Eren's Titan, when you see all of the different Titans. What do you think? Like, seeing all of that, especially because my biggest takeaway was, I never thought it would be possible for them to pay off the season 2 opening with all the weird animals, and like the whale and the like dinosaurs, and then suddenly we had like a dog Titan and an alligator Titan and like a snake thing and the Okapi and all of that stuff. I thought was really cool.
Yeah, the theory that I've had since season 2. I mean, a lot of people had this theory, right? When they saw that opening, was that like a beast Titan means you can be any kind of beast. It doesn't mean you'll be a giant monkey. And you got to see that with I always mispronounce his name. I don't know if it's Casaver or Saver.
Yeah, I think that they pronounce it like Casaver.
Casaver being a giant ram. And I was like, who's this ram who's just ramming into everyone? And it was Casaver. And then you see the snake and you see all these animals. And I'm like, that's cool, because you get that payoff of like always thinking that that's what the Beast Titan was. The other cool thing was seeing all the Warhammers and all the armored. The armored look crazy, the way that the armored Titans were set up. Some of them had like, I saw one that looked like the Thing from Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool as well. And I feel like it was cool to see the past, you know, help, like Galliard and Ymir and Grisha come back. But I wish they kind of had a line or two to show that they were somewhat sentient.
I wonder if that was intentional, because I think none of them spoke. I think because they're there, like they might be there, they could see them, but like they weren't. Yeah, you say they weren't sentient, probably.
Yeah, I was going to say it was more like
none of them spoke.
It was more like a loss. It wasn't really explained. Obviously, we can just speculate. It was more like a lost consciousness, right? Where they're just somewhere in the ether, connected more to the person than they are to themselves. which is why they never really spoke, and which is why I always felt like there was a disconnect there, where it's like it's not necessarily Galliard, but it's like the will of Galliard. It's like Jor-El in Superman, where it's more like this is his memories and his will, where this is what he would have done if he was alive. He would have helped out. And that's his will kind of going on and helping him out. And I still like that, but I still feel like it would have been so cool if they were just like 5 minutes, you're back to life. And they would have said something. You know who I feel like, this is the last thing I'll say because I've talked too much and we've gone too long. The only thing I will say, like, I've kept thinking about characters, right? Like thinking about Levi, who became like, Levi was just a tank. He was just there to take beatings and just take it in and just keep going forward. He never did anything super special besides obviously kill Zeke, which I saw coming a mile away. But that's his role. I felt like that was really cool. But the one character I feel like got shafted, and I mean shafted, like, oh my God, like Iyasama was writing this character and then he was like, forget it, I'm gonna write someone else, was Ymir. I was like, Ymir used to be like a big deal for a lot of people. And I thought she was gonna get this big redeeming moment. Something where someone remembers Ymir. Like we got Sasha, like Little Shadow, everyone got a moment, but I was like,
that's true.
Ymir, like, to me, was like so shafted because we never even got a final goodbye with Ymir. We saw a memory of Galliard eating Ymir, and that was it. He called her a pathetic woman.
We got the letter that she sent Historia
in the letter, yeah.
3.
But I feel like
she was relatively friends with like everyone knew her.
Yeah, and she was like in love with Historia. like, this is so I don't know. I just felt like at the end I was like, oh, they're gonna do something with her, and then she just disappears, and I was like, come on, Ymir's been around. She deserves something where people are like, yo, shout out Ymir, just something like that where Reiner just remembers her and it's like, thank you, Ymir, something, because she technically helped Reiner in that moment because he was in charge in that moment. So that's the only thing I'll say, where I was like, she low-key kind of got forgotten.
You're right.
So, but other than that, I enjoyed it, and I feel like there's a lot there. There's a lot of complexity there, and I could probably talk about it for 2 hours. But Rafael, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Any final thoughts you want to say?
No, just to say, like, I am glad the show went on a high note. Whether you think it's like the highest of notes or just okay, I think most of us can agree that it didn't ruin anything. It didn't tarnish the reputation of Attack on Titan. And like, if you like the show, then the end is at least like up to that legacy. I think like the legacy of Attack on Titan is gonna be big and long lasting.
Yeah.
Which is good. Right.
Anyways, guys, that was our thoughts on Attack on Titan. Make sure you guys like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Follow us right here at First Cut. Subscribe right here to First Cut. You can follow Rafael at what's your at, man?
Just my name, Rafael Motomayor.
Awesome. And then you can follow me at Squad Leader Ace, guys. But by the way, for the Attack on Titan crew, we're gonna be peacing out. So peace.